What's up? Welcome to Journey in the Self. I'm your host, Sarah. Tonight's show will be to manage stress, manage your mind. The reason that I came up with that topic was because often when I choose a topic for the show, it will be based upon, and even when I do some of my Facebook posts, it'll be based upon some things that I've observed in life, certain patterns that I'll notice. Sometimes it'll be based upon the nature of the conversations that I have when people reach out to me for counsel. And mind you, people reach out for me to counsel in just about every aspect of my life, whether uh, they're reaching out as clients, friends, family, co-workers. People always tend to reach out to me. One of the things that I've noticed that has been a recurring theme lately is that people are reaching out to me because they're feeling stressed. They're having difficulty sleeping and just having a difficult time. And these days, that's quite understandable because there's so many things going on that if one engages excessively in thought about it, one can easily become become stressed. Many people are experiencing the results of decisions that have been made in the wake of the Trump's administration's alleged push for efficiency in government. And I say alleged because I do not believe that efficiency has anything to do with what's going on right now uh, with the Doge or whatever, or however you want to pronounce that. I do not believe that the motivation behind that has anything to do with efficiency at all. So before we get into the stress, I'll just give you my personal insights and thoughts about that. As we've talked about in the past, we've been able to document that Trump and many of the people who are joining him on this administration are connected to ultimately the inner circle of the roundtable group, the secret society that was created by the seventh will of Cecil Rhodes, who assigned Lord Rothschild to carry out the objective stated in his will, and one of which was to create the secret society. The objective of the secret society was to establish the the British Empire throughout the world. Now, that was really to establish Anglo-Saxon Zionist control throughout the world. And that was the impetus behind the founding of the state of Israel, understanding the that the Zionists, particularly Lord Rothschild, had a significant influence on world affairs because of the fact that him and his family exercised a high amount of control over finance. One of the statements attributed to Lord Rothschild is that I let me but control a nation's money, and I care not who makes their laws. From which the phrase, he who has the gold makes the rules. And so, as we talked about in past shows, when someone talks about the establishment, we're talking about the roundtable group. We're talking about secret societies that operate in alignment with the roundtable group. We talk about ancillary organizations such as the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Rockefeller Foundation, who are the North American agents of the Rothschilds, and the United Nations, and the international banking cartels, and the media. And so we understand that this is not a right wing versus left wing, because as we've documented, they control both sides. Indeed, with the current administration, the current Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, was a former employee of the Soros organization, who most people associate with being uh, the left wing. And Trump, of course, is considered to be um, right wing conservative. So all of that perceived conflict is just a subterfuge, just an illusion. It's for public consumption. It's the same thing, just shrouded to confuse the masses. Anyhow, I said that to say that there is no intent to drain the swamp. They are the swamp. So it's not about efficiency. So as we see the Doge uh, seeking to close down government agencies under the auspices of creating efficiency, the objective is ultimately to privatize the services that were offered, uh, extended by the government, with financed by taxpayer dollars to benefit taxpayers with the money that they pay in taxes. Instead, those services will be contracted out with taxpayer money, instead not going to taxpayers, but into the coffers of the contractors who have designed the programs that are being implemented by those who wrote the Project 2025, the think tank who wrote Project 2025, and who own and control private corporations who will benefit and will get the contracts for the services that were formerly uh, provided for by government agencies funded by taxpayer dollars. Instead, those taxpayer dollars will go to contractors to uh, increase their wealth and to concentrate wealth even further amongst the elite. Okay, so that's really what's going on. It's not about draining the swamp or creating any kinds of any kind of efficiency. So I make that point to underscore the fact that the aftermath of some of these initiatives that have been taken, where these agencies have been directed to lay off people, uh, to issue reduction in force, uh, has created an environment of fear, uh, has created a lot of stress and anxiety amongst a number of people. Um, Uncertainty about whether they're going to have a livelihood, even for government agencies that are not appropriated or paid for by tax dollars are also being affected. So I have been contacted by a number of people who are caught up in anxiety over some of these actions and the potential uh, repercussions. Okay, and so often I found when speaking to people that the anxiety stems from them thinking about what could happen in the future, not necessarily what's happening right now in the present moment, but they're extrapolating into the future and thinking about the possibility of things that could happen, typically, which are adverse possibilities. And by allowing themselves to continue thinking about these adverse possibilities, they get stressed, their blood pressure rises, they feel anxious, tired, worn out. But the things that they're thinking about aren't things that have happened. These are things that they've projected into the future. They're not based upon what's happening now in the moment. It's thinking. It's what they're thinking about that's causing their anxiety. It's what they're thinking about that's causing their stress. Okay, so I'm going to read something that I found in a spiritual book, which is a very powerful story about uh, the effects of thinking, the adverse effects of thinking, the adverse effects of not being in control of one's mind. And I will, before I read that story, I will share again my personal definition of fear. And it's not what you think. Many people will, when uh, the word fear is the popular uh, interpretation is false evidence becoming real. Uh, that's not my definition. Not that that's bad, but I think my personal definition is more reflective of what people actually experience when they get into that state of mind. Okay. So my personal definition of fear is the expression of faith in a negative outcome. I'll say that again. My definition of fear is the expression of faith in a negative outcome. The reason I say that is that when someone is in fear, it is because they believe that something negative is going to happen. They are expressing faith that something negative is going to happen, because if they didn't have faith that something negative was going to happen, they wouldn't be afraid. And so the emotional state that anyone is in at any given point is a direct reflection of what's going on in their mind, in our minds. Okay, so with that, I will read the story. This is called Thinking Problem. I don't remember which spiritual book I got it from, but it stayed with me. So it's called Thinking Problem. It goes, it started out innocently enough. I began to think at parties every now and then, just to loosen up. Inevitably, though, one thought led to another, and soon I was more than just a social thinker. I began to think even when I was all by myself. Thinking became more and more important to me, and finally, I was thinking all the time. I just couldn't control myself. I began thinking on the job. Soon, I had a reputation at work as a heavy thinker. One day, the boss called me in and said, "I like you, and it hurts me to say this, but your thinking has become a real problem. If you don't stop thinking on the job, we're going to have to let you go." That gave me a lot to think about. At my next checkup, my doctor told me that my heavy thinking was giving me high blood pressure. And if I continue to go on like this, I might not live much longer. But today, I'm a recovering thinker. Life is so much more peaceful now that I've stopped thinking. So ponder that for a minute. Thinking is at the root of our emotional state. Thinking has a lot of power. So if we notice ourselves to be in a negative state of mind, whether it be fear, anxiety, stress, sadness, depression, anger, those states of emotion are directly attributable to what we're thinking at any given moment. Conversely, if we're happy, joyful, peaceful, content, elated, it is attributable to whatever we're thinking at that moment. So there's a lot of power in our thoughts. What's important for us also to realize is that we have the power to control them. And not only do we have the power to control them, it is our responsibility to do so, as we should be the masters of our mind. Our mind is not supposed to master us. The mind is a tool. Our bodies are a tool. Our senses are tools. They're not supposed to be in control of us. We are supposed to be in control of them. Brother Hassan says, I often don't feel like a master. And I can say that myself. We don't always feel like we have mastery over ourselves. And, at any given moment, we can lose awareness and lose control of our thoughts. And as a result, lose control of our emotions and find them to be in control of us. And that will happen. Even, for those of us who even know that we have the power to control them. But what's important for us to realize is that for the majority of all of our lives, we have not exercised our control. We didn't even have the awareness that we have the ability to control our thoughts and our emotions. We weren't taught that by our religions. We weren't taught that by our family, our parents. They didn't have the awareness of it. And so, as we've learned spiritual principles, we must be aware that applying them is going to be a process. It's going to take some time of practice in order to master them, in order for us to be masters of ourselves. So our objective is self-mastery, but we don't attain self-mastery just by proclaiming ourselves to be masters, although it is a positive thing to give ourselves those types of affirmations, but we have to exercise it. We have to practice it. Recently, I was watching a podcast where Barry Bonds was speaking about his ability to hit a baseball, and someone asked him if he could, even at the age that he's at now, and I think he's in maybe his late 40s or early 50s. Someone asked if he could hit a 100-mile-an-hour baseball. And he says, "Of course, I can." Some people might scoff about that, but I believe him because mastery of hitting a baseball he has attained from practicing it all of his life, to where hitting the baseball is just a matter of it's a reaction for him. It's not something that he has to think about. He has practiced it all of his life. So he has mastered hitting the baseball. Now, as that relates to us, we are relative neophytes in the practice of the principles of spirituality. We are neophytes in terms of practicing control over our thoughts, practicing control over our minds, practicing control over the words we speak, practicing control over our actions. Because often our actions are a direct reflection of what we're continuously thinking. And so then we end up finding ourselves taking action based upon the dominant nature of our thoughts. And we end up doing things that making choices, not really understanding why we're making them. Sometimes we end up defaulting to the subconscious choices, which are dictated by the neural patterns, if you will, or uh, habits that we've developed over the course of our lives. Habits that we've picked up from observing our family members. And then we emulate those things to where they become habits for us, um, not reflecting upon whether those things make sense for us to do. It's just that we've always done it. So there's certain things that we just do reactively because we've practiced that for all of our lives. So when we embark on the path of putting spiritual practices into, or spiritual knowledge into practice in our lives, it's important for us to be patient with ourselves, because it's not just the fact that we're looking to apply the knowledge in our lives, but we also have to contend with the fact that we, if we lose awareness, that we lose sight of being in the moment, in the present, we will often find ourselves reverting to our old patterns, because that's what we have practiced. We have been proficient. We've learned to be proficient at the things that we've always done by default. Okay. And so as we are practicing, implementing spiritual principles, we also have the hurdle of overcoming old habits. So it's not like where Barry Bonds uh, has had to when he was learning to hit, to overcome the any bad habits that he's learned from hitting before. He's just learning how to hit. Okay. Now, say 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 Barry Bonds at some point uh, picked up some bad habits in his swing, um, from maybe watching some other player, and uh, he developed a hitch in his swing, and so now, and he's done that for a while, to where it's like become kind of reflexive. So at that point, he has to retrain himself. He has to get out of the bad habits, to overcome the bad habits. He uh, Because now they are ingrained in how he reacts. It's a subconscious thing, and so now he has to exercise more uh, intent and focus on implementing the his old swing and making that to be a habit again, to where he doesn't have to think, he reacts. That takes continuous practice. If I play baseball, um, I'm not as proficient as Barry Bonds, but I can go out and hit right now without having to think about it. Again, I'm not as proficient as Barry Bonds, but I've played baseball all my life. So I don't have to think about hitting. I don't have to think about what it is to uh, chase down a fly ball. I just do it because I've practiced it all my life. Okay. And so it's the same way when we're engaging in putting spiritual knowledge into practice in our lives. We have to have the patience to know that it's going to take us continuous practice to where we become proficient. And it's going to be important for us not to allow ourselves to get frustrated with ourselves and beat ourselves up if we have a lapse in consciousness and end up repeating and reverting to old patterns. It's just that we have to make sure that we are in observation of ourselves so that we can identify when we have reverted and then change course back to what it is that we intend to do. Brother Hassan gave me an inside joke, which I probably won't repeat. I'll just say, I don't know if I've attained to that level yet, just yet, brother Hassan. If I was to encounter that particular situation, um, I would probably fail. Anyway, um, but I get your point. So, as we experience challenging times, and it's especially when we're experiencing challenging times, is when it becomes more important for us to be steadfast in the application of our spiritual principles. Indeed, it's always easy to do things when we're not challenged. Okay. So it's easy for me to go and, for instance, uh, hit a baseball when someone's only throwing it at 50 miles an hour. That's not a challenge. Okay. That doesn't require the same level of focus. That doesn't require that I be mindful of my maintaining proper mechanics, uh, but just maintaining a heightened level of focus. Uh, 50 mile per hour fastball, I can have a lapse because I have more time to correct if my swing isn't tight. Whereas if I'm facing a 90 mile per hour fastball, uh, I don't have the luxury of time to make a correction. I can't afford to have a lapse. I have to have a heightened degree of focus because that's more of a challenge. So in the same way, when we are faced with the waves of discord, our ability to be able to maintain our focus, to maintain control over our thoughts, to maintain control over our emotions, uh, we are challenged to maintain it. But we get stronger by facing and overcoming the challenge. When I talked about faith And I gave my definition of fear. Fear is the expression of faith in a negative outcome. But we can apply faith positively in manifesting the things that we want by maintaining a concentrated focus on the things that we do want to experience in our lives, and expressing a an emotion that's in accordance with us achieving that objective, which amplifies the effect to bring it in the past. But it's easy to have faith when things are good, just as it is that it's easy for me to hit a 50-mile-per-hour fastball. It's not a challenge. And so we need the faith. We need the focus when we are faced with challenging circumstances. That's when it's really important for us to be steadfast when we're facing the challenge, when times are difficult, when we're faced with that 95-mile-per-hour fastball. And by practicing when we're facing the challenge, we become more proficient. By overcoming the challenge, we become more confident at being able to overcome it. And then through the continued practice, we become more proficient. It becomes more a part of us. It becomes part of our psyche. We get to the point where we become proficient at it, even during challenging circumstances. There are 4 levels of competency. There is the first level, unconscious incompetence, where we don't know that we don't know. So since we don't know anything about it, we're certainly not proficient at it. Just like a toddler, or even, I wouldn't even say toddler, a baby who has spent his life up to that point crawling around, uh, you teach the child to walk, and you point out that now he's walking, he should put some shoes on. And you put his shoes on him and you teach him how to tie his shoes. Okay. The child didn't know that tying shoes was a thing. So he's unconsciously incompetent in tying his shoes because he didn't even know such a thing existed. So he certainly didn't have any level of proficiency at it. Unconscious incompetence. So you begin to teach the child how to tie his shoes. You show him how one lace goes over the other. and one goes under, and you grab both once you created a bow and tighten it. And so he begins trying to do it, but he's consciously incompetent. He knows there's such a thing as tying shoes now, but though he knows and has observed you tying your shoes, uh, he still can't do it. He's consciously incompetent. He knows it's a thing now, but he also knows he can't do it. But you're teaching him how. You're showing him the process. And so you're encouraging him to practice it, or her. And so the child begins tying their shoes, but they have to think about it every step of the way. They're thinking about the process. So they're learning how to do it. They're starting to become proficient at it, but they have to think about it as they're doing it in order for it to happen. That's conscious competence. They're able to do it, but they have to think about it. The final stage of competence is unconscious competence, where now you've done it so much to where you don't have to think about it any longer. It becomes virtually part of you. So just as in the example that I gave about Barry Bonds, being able to hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball now, is because he's developed unconscious competence at hitting a fastball. He can do it without thinking about it. Okay, we've developed unconscious competence at things. We developed unconscious competence about in driving home from work, right? We don't have to think about how we drive home from work. We just do it. We could think about everything but driving home. The next thing you know, we're there and we don't realize how we got there because we weren't even having to think about it. We just drove. The next thing you know, we're home. We've developed unconscious competence at many things. We just do a lot of things without having to think about it. However, some of these things that we've developed unconscious competency at are not necessarily things that benefit us. And so we have to overcome the things that we've done that don't produce positive results and replace them with things that will give us the results that we want. And so we're basically reprogramming ourselves. One of my favorite songs that underscores the power of thinking, I'll share some of the lyrics from it. And I didn't write these lyrics. This is a song from Funkadelic written by George Clinton. It's called Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. If you want to listen to it, it is on the Standing on the Verge of Getting It On album. And the song is called Good Thoughts, Bad Thoughts. Funkadelic. It goes, travel like a king. Listen to the inner voice. A higher wisdom is at work for you. Conquering the stumbling blocks come easier when the conqueror is in tune with the infinite. Every ending is a new beginning. Life is an endless unfolding. Change your mind and change your relation to time. You can find the answer. The solution lies within the problem. The answer is in every question. Dig it? An attitude is all you need to rise and walk away. Inspire yourself. Your life is yours. It fits you like your skin. The oak sleeps in the acorn. The giant sequoia tree sleeps in its tiny seed. The bird waits in the egg. God waits for his unfoldment in man. Fly on, children. You gravitate to that which you secretly love most. You meet in life the exact reproduction of your own thoughts. There is no chance, coincidence, or accident in a world ruled by law and divine order. You rise as high as your dominant aspirations. You descend to the level of your lowest concept of yourself. Think right and you can fly. Free your mind and your ass will follow. The infinite intelligence within you knows the answers. Its nature is to respond to your thoughts. Be careful of the thought seeds you plant in the garden of your mind, for seeds go after their kind. Good thoughts bring forth good fruit. Bullshit thoughts rot your meat. Think right and you can fly. The kingdom of heaven is within. Free your mind and your ass will follow. Every thought felt as true or allowed to be accepted as true by your conscious mind takes root in your subconscious, blossoming sooner or later into an act, and bears its own fruit. The kingdom of heaven is within. Free your mind and your ass will follow. Okay, so the song underscores the power of thoughts. Thoughts are like seeds. But uh, thoughts can also be weeds. And so it's important for us to have the power of discernment over the nature of thoughts that we allow in the garden of our mind. We have the ability to choose thoughts. And so the thoughts that we want to plant in the garden of our minds and water and cultivate are thoughts that are in alignment with what we want to experience in our lives. We have a choice. We don't want to experience things that would bring us discomfort. So it's important for us to be in control of our minds. For if we do not, we will be focused on the things that we don't want. And those things that we give our energy to, the focus of our thoughts, will bring forth manifestation by the power of our concentration, the power of our focus, amplified by our emotions, amplified by the intensity of our emotions. And so, if we allow ourselves to be caught in negative emotions and overcome by them, we're giving an increased focus of energy to the negative. cultivating it until it becomes a reality. Now we can do that on the positive side. I will share a recent personal example of how this works on the negative. I was in a relationship, and the woman I was with had experienced some traumatic experiences with her previous relationships. Uh, and so there was fear of abandonment, there was fear of infidelity from her experiences, from her past experiences, mind you. But that fear, based upon the past experiences, affected her in the now, in the present. And her focus on the past affected the way she thought, and it affected her actions. So much to the point where the thoughts took control of her mind, where it created in her mind the scenario that uh, I cheated on her. And she thought about it so much to where it became like a reality in her mind, to where she made a decision based upon the belief driven by the focus that she had on that negative thought, to where she ended up making the decision to end the relationship because her mind, out of her fear of the past, made that a reality in her mind. There was no infidelity. It only became a reality in her mind. And that ended up affecting her decision making about a relationship that she really wanted, but she created pain for herself only out of her own thoughts. We can create, we create our own emotions. We are responsible for our emotions. We're responsible for our thoughts. We're responsible for the experiences that we have. As we bring them forth from the nature of our thoughts or from our past karma. That might be something that I might speak on in the future show, talking about the different levels of karma that we experience, we will inevitably experience. So I want to, I think we're coming to the end of the show. I'm hoping that if you listen and apply uh, the principles and knowledge that I shared, that it will help you to be able to navigate through these potentially stressful times in such a way that we don't succumb to stress, because we've made it a point to exercise mastery over our minds, that they don't master us. So with that, thank you for tuning in to Journey in the Self. If you want to reach out to me, you can contact me here on Facebook, instant message me, or you can reach out to me and also set up an appointment with me on my website, www.sa-ra.org. And if you do so, you will be able to receive a free 15 to 30 minute consultation, and we'll go from there. All right. So thank you for tuning in. Trust that you've benefited from this, and let me know how it goes for you as you put these things into practice. Thank you for joining us on Journey Yourself. We see you next time. Hotel.